Hey, everybody. Welcome to Defender Fridays, my usual pitch. We get to talk to all kinds of folks in the industry about all kinds of interesting things, things that we may not necessarily know a whole lot about. So discover things, and we wanted to extend the circle. So this is meant to be a conversation. It's not slides. And in fact, today, I think that that side of things is going to be easy. We've got with us Ken, who's going to be talking about Defender things, and I know it kind of sounds boring up front, but I thought it was fascinating because Defender is sort of one of those things that everybody kind of knows about, has heard about, but I feel like at the same time, very few people actually know about like the structure and what's in where. It sounds really kind of complicated, so we thought it'd be a great fit to have Ken to talk about that topic. Hey, Ken, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, howdy, folks. My name's Ken Westin. I'm a solutions engineer here at LimaCharlie. And yeah, we just actually did a webinar on this topic as well as a workshop. Yeah, it was really interesting kind of digging into it. It was more confusing than anything else, just trying to decipher and figure out all the different licensing models. So yeah, I thought this would be a great topic of discussion. I do have like one slide I can show you guys in a bit, just kind of outlines the different versions of Windows Defender and things. But other than that, there won't be any other slides, I promise.
Nice. Because yeah, Defender is not one thing, is what I gather from this, right? Defender is many different things through different prisms.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and it's had many different names too. They keep changing it. Like I know, I think there's a Microsoft Defender for everything now. Like Microsoft, Defender for toasters. I think that's what's coming next.
There's got to be a Defender for AI, right?
Yes, I'm
Not
sure there
necessarily.
is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, LLMs or whatever. Like, yeah, I think we're going to put Microsoft Defender in front of everything.
Defender as a service. I like that. Is there a Defender for Defender? And make sure your Defender doesn't get disabled.
That's called Lima
Um,
Charlie.
yeah.
Lima Charlie for Defender.
Yeah. Cool. Well, take it away.
Sure, I'll share. Let me just share this real quick here. Make sure I can. Uh, looks like you have disabled
Oh,
attendee screen sharing.
yes. I need to promote you, which I can do. Make host.
But one thing I can start with
There we
is,
go.
a lot of
Good
the.
stuff.
Okay, we're good. Okay, good. Let's see here. There we go. So, just this is kind of you guys can see my screen, hopefully. Yeah. So this is sort of what I was thinking in terms of the different tiers and things, right? So we have Defender. It used to be all these different names, right? So a lot of times I think what people think of Defender as is actually Windows security, which is the Microsoft Defender antivirus. That's primarily what it is. What's interesting is how much actually gets thrown into this for free, right? There's all these different components and all these different monitoring capabilities that are built into it. What I found is that they don't necessarily provide a lot of like visualizations or visibility into some of these key data sources, right? So that's kind of what I noticed. And so you have first Microsoft Defender is actually for families, and it really doesn't add any additional capabilities to it at all, right? You have like identity tab monitoring and some privacy protection, so it's some additional services that are around that. And then when you actually get into the endpoint for enterprise, right? So that's where you have plan one and plan two. So plan one, basically you get a free with the E3 license, but I think that's challenging for a lot of folks because you can't really like it's all built on users, right? It comes with a lot of other features and things, but then you have plan two and there's some additional things that go into it, but it's like incorporating threat intelligence and all these other capabilities that I've found, particularly for MSSPs, is going to be something that's better for them to actually implement on their own because they have more control over it. And I also found that they can write additional detections and additional content around that as well that they can then provide to their customers. So I think the licensing was interesting too. I found that there is a way to get them standalone, so you are paying like per endpoint, and it was $3 a month for like the standalone, but that only incorporates like the telemetry for when they get a hit. So if there's like a virus hit or something like that, that's going to be sent into the console. But you're not going to be able to have all the additional telemetry like the sysmon, Windows event logs, and all the other events that are around it. They're going to be critically important for an investigation. I think you do get some of that with the E5, where they do try to stitch together sort of a story around some of that, but you're still not going to have access to the sort of raw telemetry and those raw logs. If you want to bring those in, then you're going to have Sentinel, right? And that starts at $5 per gigabyte, which I just thought that was, I don't know how people can afford that. And that's also, it's like Splunk pricing. You can get it at different tiers. Like you can do the 100 gigabytes, per day data ingest. So then you have to make these sort of predictions as well around, what that's going to look like. And for MSSPs, that can be really difficult because you don't know, what your customers are going to be deploying and things like that as well. So that's sort of like where I kind of liked the LimaCharlie approach. I'm not going to be too salesy here, but basically where we just tap into that telemetry that you get for free. And then we're able to also bring in additional data like the sysmon data. We can bring in Windows event logs, all this additional telemetry. And we charge $3 a month for all of that, plus a full year of data retention. With Defender, you get 180 days, which isn't too bad, really. But again, it's only going to be sort of select telemetry. You're not getting all of the different events and things like that are going to be important for investigations as well as threat hunting. So kind of pause there if there's any questions, or I thought this would be more of an interesting discussion topic, because I'm kind of curious like how other folks, particularly on the MSSP side, how do they look at this? Do they hold the license for like the E3 and E5 license for the customer, or do you leverage the customer's license? I'm just kind of curious how that works.
Yeah, I get the feeling that there's, as much as we've laid it out like this way, I get the feeling that there's many, many, many different ways to actually go and slice and dice it. I'm kind of curious on like the standalone, and you have like E3 with like a price, and then standalone. So standalone, is it really just a different license? Like, is it like a different mode or?
It's just you get all of that capability. It's more focused on like endpoint pricing, so that's where they have it. And from what I found, it was mostly around like something that they offer for people that are resellers or service providers. So that's not necessarily something you can go to Microsoft directly for. I didn't find an easy way to do it. It looks like you have to go through a partner to be able to get that standalone pricing. So I think that's kind of how they're getting around some of this confusion around the licensing per user for MSSPs and other service providers.
Interesting, because the difference between 33 and 3 is pretty huge. It's
Well,
oh,
I think the E3 license, it also includes all the applications, like all of the Microsoft suite and all of that. That's kind of what
oh,
that's based on. So you basically get the Microsoft for Endpoint Plan 1 with the E3 license, along with all the other bells and whistles. Which, I mean, that's great if they're a Microsoft shop and that's what they already have those licenses and they're leveraging those tools. That's great, because then it's basically a free add-on. But if they're not a Microsoft shop, like if LimaCharlie, we use like Google, right? Then that's not necessarily going to be a good deal. And you still want to maybe have that additional security for your Windows fleet, right?
right. And so I see Chris's comment there about the 180 days. I think essentially the 180 days means they're going to have the data if you need a dump, like after the fact, if there's an incident, but
Yeah.
you can only search for 30 days. That's kind of my
Yeah.
interpretation here.
Yeah, you can only search the last 30 days. And so, yeah, and if you want to be able to, do additional like deep dive searches, you have to load that data into Sentinel. And that's where you have the $5 per gigabyte or whatever. That's just, I don't know, it's really crazy.
Oh, I see. So that's how they do that. If you need more than the 30 days, you need to like consume it in the other product.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's
And
kind of nickel and dime. That's why I think the costs can get kind of out of control for some of these. And so, I mean, especially for service providers, like sometimes you don't have a lot of control over some of this, like the E3, E5 license. So, I'm just kind of curious what other service providers and how they're managing that.
yeah, and not to call out like very specific people, although I said that before doing exactly that. But I see Mitchell, sounds like maybe you have experience in that space. I think we would all kind of love people's input there that are kind of working day to day into that, about how that works. So if you want to hop into conversation, we're happy to add you to the host or the panel or whatever it is. But I'm curious, is there anybody else that um, that does that's kind of like day in, day out into that? I know, Ken, you had a bunch of questions, I think, around how, I think you kind of called it off, right? Like who owns the license and how that works.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I'm just like, if people don't want to answer, there is another question that came in too. So there was a question about upgrading the highest Defender plan. Does that improve your ingest speed of endpoint events? Not that I found. And in fact, I actually see also in the Microsoft kind of ecosystem on the security side, there's a lot of latency. And sometimes there's like events that get dropped and things like that. I'm not necessarily always on the Defender for endpoint side, but also just on the Azure side, right? So I think that's another advantage of LimaCharlie, because we're almost immediate. We're able to do response actions, and there's some automated responses that happen, but you can't really do a lot of manual unless you actually have the E5 or the Plan 2 to do some manual response capabilities. Again, where I like with LimaCharlie, we're able to do a lot of really cool things. Not only delete things if we need to, but we can also deploy additional incident response tools like Velociraptor. Right. That's something you can't necessarily do with a Defender.
Yeah. And how does how does all of the extra Sentinel stuff comes in? Like, is Sentinel, it's a different product?
Yeah, completely separate. So it's their SIM, right? The Sentinel is their SIM, and yeah, and it's I found like if you bring in some of the telemetry, there is some free capabilities that they provide. I can't remember how much they give you, but you can burn through that fairly quickly. And once that happens, then the price gets pretty expensive. And I think the data retention default is like 30 days, and then if you want more, you have to pay extra for that. So every time I look at like the Microsoft stuff, it's like, okay, it looks like it's this price. Oh yeah, Defender's free. But if you actually want to make use of that data, that's where things getting really expensive, right? If you want to visualize it, you want to search it, you want to be able to act on it. That's where it seems like all these additional costs come in.
Right. And how does the other Defender things come in? Like, is that, because like we were joking earlier that there's like Defender for AI, like, and all that stuff, right? So those are part of the the E3 license kind of thing, and they're separate from this, right?
Yeah, there are some additional like things you can do. Like there is some free stuff you can get in the Sentinel, but again, like not practical like for at scale. Like it's almost like it's great for like a small environment or a small business, but like for the enterprise, that's where it seems like it gets really expensive. There is all sorts of other defenders like M365 Defender, which is more cloud based, looking at like workspace stuff. But yeah, I was more specifically looking at the Microsoft for Endpoint, different plans and things like that. But there's all sorts of other defenders that they have. I don't know. I'm serious. They're going to have a Defender for toasters and refrigerators soon.
And the Sentinel rely on a different agent than MDE. What's MDE? I feel like I should know this.
All right, Sentinel rely on
Endpoint.
Oh, sorry. Stupid question. Thank you.
Yeah, monitoring. Yeah, Azure has its own monitoring agent. Yeah, and that's where he brings additional telemetry. And so, if you wanted to bring in additional telemetry, I think you also do have to deploy different agents. Microsoft Defender again, it usually just sends the matches, right? That's what you're going to be able to get, but you're not going to get like all the sysmon, all the Windows event logs like we can in LimaCharlie.
Right. So that's actually great question. I'm very curious about that. Like sysmon, Defender is not sysmon. Sysmon is a Microsoft product/project, but it's not a product per se, right? Like there's no, it's not like having it pre-deployed on your fleet or anything like that. It's something you got to go and deploy. That's my understanding. Is that?
Yeah, it's additional tool, and it's really like critically important, particularly for like audits. If there's like a compliance purpose or a threat, it's incredibly useful for threat hunting because it gives you just much more verbose logging around specific events that are happening on the different endpoints. It can also be very high volume, so the different configurations for Sysmon, there's tons of them out there. I think probably the best, most famous ones like Swift on Security, if you know them, they have their own Sysmon configuration that you can deploy. But that does increase the volume, particularly like on busy servers and things like that. That's why I feel like LimaCharlie is such a great deal. You can bring in all this streaming telemetry for $3 a month, like and Sysmon and everything too. It's crazy.
So Sysmon is Sysmon is free, but it won't like it's free, but it's not, because it's not Defender. It's not directly connected. You've got to bring it in. Like essentially, it's a parallel pipe to kind of what we're showing here. Is that it, right? Like if I want to deploy it, I essentially have to like set it up myself and then do the ingest into, maybe I have Sentinel, but it could also be LK. So it's kind of like it's a parallel track, right?
Yeah, and you have to have a place to store that data, because like you can start collecting it on the endpoint itself, but then you need a place to be able to send those so you're going to have to send it into a SIM or some sort of a log analytics tool. And so that's where it's kind of like sound like the open source concept. It's free, but free like a puppy, right? Because you still have to send that data somewhere, and it's a high volume. So if you send that into Splunk, that's going to be pretty stinking expensive. I used to run a lot of threat hunting workshops when I was at Splunk, and that was one of the main reasons we did the workshop, is because we wanted people to ingest more data and increase their spend, so blow up their Splunk license, right? And so I think here, if you want to bring that into Sentinel, it can get pretty expensive.
Right. And I guess at that point, it's kind of like somebody mentioned OS Query. It's essentially on the same level as OS Query, in the sense that, okay, OS Query is not like officially Microsoft supported, but they're both open source. You both have to set them up yourself. You both have to send them to your own data lake or like SIM, right? Like, so or is there an advantage? Well, I'm sorry. I'm sure there's like advantages to both of them, but like functionally, they're kind of like the same type of thing, right?
Yeah, they kind of do the same thing. Like OS Query is better probably for like non-Microsoft, applications like Linux or Mac, things like that. At least I used OS Query pretty heavily on the Mac side. That's one thing I should say too, is that there is Microsoft Endpoint for Mac, but it comes with like when you install Word and Excel and all of that. There's a component, and but of course it's not going to provide you as much telemetry as you get on the Microsoft side.
Right. Hopefully it's not just a wrapper over Xprotect, just like the gatekeeper stuff on macOS. Not that any vendor only does that and calls it a day.
Well, I think we tap into it on our Mac with our Mac client, and we can tap into the Windows Defender for Mac. But it does basically look to see if like Xprotect is enabled or not. It's not. Again, it's not going to be as verbose as you get on the Microsoft side.
Right. How's people's experience on that side of things? Like, especially like some folks mentioned also Sysmon is they have a version for macOS and Linux. Is that any good? How's folks' experience there?
Yeah, I haven't used Sysmon on Mac or Linux, so I'd be curious.
Apple's endpoint security. Yeah, and I see reference to Apple's endpoint security. Is that's not an agent? Apple hasn't come out with an agent, right? Like they have the framework that everybody has to use, but as far as I know, Xprotect is like the only thing that they've got really running. Right. Okay. Yeah. It's not only a framework, it's the framework because Apple is Apple, and I mean Microsoft's probably going that way too.
Yeah,
So
it's funny. I did like a demo of like how to bypass security controls on Mac, and I think I just used AppleScript at the time, and I disguised an AppleScript as an MP3 file, and I hid the extensions. And so if you double clicked on this, it would actually open up iTunes and then send a bunch of data from your system through iTunes, and then I would have it stream a video or an MP3 from my server. It was kind of fun. I did it at DEF CON. It was a lot of fun. But
that's
yeah,
cool. That's cool. Hopefully they've slowly kind of closed all of those issues.
nope, you can still do it. it's
Really?
yeah, because well, the one thing with like it's kind of off topic here, but AppleScript, it's trusted by all the applications. So if that time if you're using AppleScript, you had access to all the different apps and things like that. You can open the browser, you could open iTunes, you could send data through it. So yeah, that like I still am able to run that script. So yeah. And now you can even do it in
Yeah.
JavaScript. So like that's the nice thing. The AppleScript engine supports JavaScript now too.
What could possibly go wrong? Uh, cost within Sentinel. Oh yeah. So sorry. Just reading. So Microsoft says that advertised price is never accurate, as there's lots of discount and other options you can do to control costs within Sentinel. Yeah, I'm assuming that if that's like at the public level, how complex it is, then there's a lot of different ways to slice and dice it internally.
What's funny, when I was looking at the pricing, when I was on the Microsoft website, I was going through and there was a link for Microsoft for endpoint pricing. I clicked on it and it went to their Chinese website and it was page not found. So I don't know. It's telling you something there. It's like their endpoint pricing is so hard that even the Chinese website can't handle it. I don't know. It's weird. You'd think that they would be able to identify those broken links, but yeah, it's incredibly difficult to find the pricing, and I think they do that intentionally. I think they want to make it confusing, and I kind of hate that because people can get into a lot of trouble. Like I've seen that with a lot of vendors, Datadog, for example, right, where people enable a feature or something like that, and all of a sudden they get this shocking surprise bill. Right. It's one thing I really kind of hate about our industry, right? We're always, even some of the SIM vendors, you pay one price and then very quickly you blow past that license and you have to increase it, right? It's like you never just like have one sale. It's like the whole goal is to, get you to hold your data for ransom, basically, like reverse ransomware.
Yeah, and this gets into a very opinion territory, but Microsoft also have so much momentum in the industry, right? With Windows, with everything else in enterprise, that to me they're kind of the definition of just like make it just bare minimum to be worth it for people. So that the CFO will go and will say, well, it's just so much more convenient and cheaper that we're just going to go for it, which
Yeah.
is a strategy. It's just not warm and fuzzy.
Well, I mean, Microsoft is it's sort of a mafia mentality in some ways. It's like, if you guys made better software, we wouldn't need to pay extra money for all these different security tools, right? So it's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. But I think we're always going to have vulnerabilities now because they can make money on the security side. It's like, I don't know. It's just funny. It's just, it'd be a shame if something were, bad to happen to this server. So you got to pay extra for these different security tools because of the operating system that we make isn't secure.
Right. I love ransomware is just the pen test that you negotiate the price after the fact.
That's true. That's so true.
Yep. So it's all about the frame of mind, right? No problem. It's just all about the frame of mind. How about you react to things?
Yeah, it's kind of funny how much, I mean, Microsoft's actually profiting from ransomware. It's just, because that's been the main target, and like that's been a huge issue for people, and that's why they want all these different security. They need all these different security tools from Microsoft. I mean, they need it for other operating systems as well, but for the most part, ransomware gangs have been targeting Microsoft in particular because it's the most common operating system in the business in the enterprise. So I think that's it's just kind of ironic that they make money off of having something that's insecure.
Yeah, it's a pretty good business when you're the cause and the solution to all of the problems.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's one way to do it. Uh,
Questions here.
yeah. So through your exploration of all of this, what's your what's your take on like that structure? Is there in your mind kind of like a sweet spot in this that's like really valuable, or like a combination of those things that you felt was like, okay, this, if you look at it this way, it's a pretty good deal if you're trying to do that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it. I think it's almost like I guess analogy would be like the Starbucks model, right? So you have the harvesting of the beans and things, right? But that's not necessarily where all the money is going to be made. Like you're harvesting this, like we're harvesting data. Like we have Windows security, we have the Defender antivirus, we have this telemetry that's available for free. But kind of where they're trying to provide a more value, more cost associated with it is trying to make use of that data. And so that's one of the things I found is like with our extension is we're able to bring in all that Defender telemetry. We have a lot more visibility into it. We're able to then correlate that and tie it to the other Windows event logs and other events that are happening on that system, and we're able to do it in a much more cost-effective manner, I think, than the Microsoft approach. And I think the opportunity here for like MSSPs in particular is that having that visibility into what's happening in these logs provides them an opportunity to write additional content, threat intelligence, incorporating new detection logic and things like that, as well as the response capabilities that they can initiate on this that you can't necessarily do in the Defender realm, because a lot of that becomes sort of a black box, and you have to pay to sort of unlock those features and give visibility into that data. And so I think, I mean, not even just like with LimaCharlie, but I think any sort of endpoint agent, if you're able to tap into that Defender data, which you can do very easily, you can even do it through scripts if you need to, right? Being able to tap into that and getting visibility into it, and then creating new content and new value based on what you see, I think is a huge opportunity for MSSPs and MDRs. I think if some of these other vendors aren't taking advantage of this, then I think they're missing a huge opportunity.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Kind of at the generic level, I think if I'm going to mirror a little bit what you said, how I interpreted it is essentially Windows security has a lot of really good stuff coming through it. And whatever solution you're using, whether it's like deploying your own sysmon or OS query, they've got to be able to hook into Windows event logs. I'm assuming
Mhm.
um, that there's a ton of value even just at that level. If you like, you stand up your sysmon, your data lake, you kind of like line that up, that you probably get like, the value is different, but certainly being able to have your sim like write rules directly on like Windows event logs coming from the boxes is probably pretty valuable. I know the one I observed was like a while back was like, I know you kind of mentioned briefly the pipeline on their end is like can be hours long, and so
Yeah.
like if only there's one advantage there, it's like if you're, I'm guessing if you're running sysmon or square, you can probably get that data and respond to it way faster.
Yeah.
um yeah.
Yeah, it's fun just to actually see the, like all these different events flowing through too. You start to see what, the structure of those logs, and then you'll learn about new event IDs, like when you go in to disable like the antivirus that, initiates event ID 5001. Like you start to then like think, okay, like I can also add this into my threat hunting playbooks as well, right? What events should I be looking for? Oh, we should write a detection for this, right? I think it's better because you're actually looking at those logs and have visibility of it, and then customizing and writing your own logic. So I think you have a better understanding of those events versus just trusting Microsoft to write those detections for you, and just rely on that solely. I don't think we're at a point where we can do that as security practitioners. We can't really trust the vendors to do that on their own. Being able to have that visibility and that control to customize it, I think, is critically important.
Yeah, certainly. I absolutely agree with you. In general, knowing what you're protected against knowing what you're looking for is a big part of the battle. Like, don't get me wrong, if you're, a tiny shop, and my go-to example is always like the hairdresser, right? Like, you have a laptop, you're not going to be a security person that knows what event logs to look for. But if you're doing cybersecurity, like, as a business, particularly if you're like an MSSP, just being able to know what you're actually detecting, I don't know. In my opinion, it's kind of a must nowadays, and a lot in the future. Otherwise, it's faith based, and
Yeah.
faith is okay, but
Faith-based security. Yeah, we'll see.
yeah, exactly.
I'm sure there's someone trying to sell that.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for having that discussion. Defender, I'm sure there's many more things to discover. Certainly, if I am curious, like, if you're like an MSSP or MDR that kind of like does a lot of those business, I would love to hear how that's structured on your side, like from a business, from a deployment, who owns what. I think it's kind of fascinating. So, like, do get in touch if you're so inclined. And otherwise, yeah, we will see you next week. But Ken, if people want to get in touch with you, any easiest way to do that?
Yeah, you can just you can reach me at I'm Ken. I'm the only Ken at LimaCharlie, so it's just Ken at LimaCharlie.com. Yeah, so if you have questions or and ideas around this too, I'd really like to hear it. Thanks so much.
Awesome. All right. Well, see you everybody next week for Defender Fridays. Have a good weekend.